So, I want you to picture this. You are sitting at 1,200 feet, fully configured for landing and perfectly stabilized on the glide slope.
Right, the landing gear is locked down, flaps are up.
Exactly. The runway alignment is dead center. I mean, from an operational standpoint, everything is completely nominal.
Yeah, the Airbus A320 is just humming along,
Yeah.
right? Doing exactly what the flight control computers were designed to do.
Yeah, the energy state is good. The speed is right on target. It's a textbook approach.
Totally textbook.
And yet, less than 2 minutes later, that exact same fully functional aircraft with, zero mechanical failures, zero engine issues, is flown directly into the dark waters of the Black Sea at almost 300 knots.
It's just chilling to think about.
It really is. So pull up a jump seat. Welcome to the simulator debrief room. You are our third pilot today, and we have a very specific mission for this session.
We're executing a deep dive into the official accident report of our Mavia Flight 967, which went down near Sochi on May 3, 2006.
Right. And I think it's important to state up front, our goal here is not to just sit back and judge the crew with the benefit of hindsight,
No, absolutely not. That's not how we learn. Our objective is to rigorously analyze the breakdown of the Airbus Golden Rules, the underlying technical logic, and those severe physiological traps that were lying in wait that night.
Because we really want you to understand that razor-thin margin between a routine go-around maneuver and, well, a catastrophic loss of situational awareness.
It's a terrifyingly thin margin.
Yeah, because the core mystery of this entire deep dive is how a perfectly good, meticulously engineered airplane ends up in the water.
Right.
To figure that out, I mean, we have to start with the textbook answer.
Yeah.
The unstabilized go-around.
Yeah, let's look at the sequence. They were perfectly stabilized, descending through about 390 meters. Then, very late in the approach, the weather just shifts.
The Sochi air traffic controller informs them the cloud ceiling has suddenly dropped to 100 meters, which is well below their minimums.
Exactly. So the controller gives them a new instruction. He says, stop descent, turn right, climb 600.
And that phrase right there, that specific phraseology is the catalyst for this entire chain of events, right?
100%. Because that is not a standard go-around instruction. A published standard go-around procedure involves a highly rehearsed physical flow.
Like muscle memory.
Exactly, muscle memory. The pilot flying aggressively advances the thrust levers all the way forward into the Togier detent takeoff go-around, and then follows a very specific missed approach route programmed into the flight management computer.
But because the controller issued this non-standard, almost, conversational instruction to simply stop descent, the crew responded outside of standard operating procedures.
Right. They pressed the PTLO button on the autopilot control panel.
The push to level off button, which, it does exactly what it sounds like. It commands the autopilot to maintain a zero vertical speed, effectively halting the descent.
Yeah, but here is the critical physical disconnect. When they pushed that button, they didn't advance the physical thrust levers.
Okay, wait, let's unpack that for a second. The levers were just left alone.
Yeah. You see, in an Airbus, the thrust levers don't just slide smoothly up and down a friction track like an older conventional aircraft.
Right, they have those physical clicks.
Exactly. They physically click into specific tactile notches, which we call detents. These detents are what tell the flight computers what overarching phase of flight you're currently in.
So when the crew pressed the level off button, they just left those thrust levers resting in the CL, or climb, detent.
Right. They never shoved them fully forward into that 2GA notch.
Okay, but I'm stuck on the automation logic here. If they specifically told the airplane to level off, why did it suddenly pitch up to a terrifying 21 degrees while rapidly losing airspeed?
Wow.
That sounds like the computer glitched and actively tried to stall the aircraft. Why didn't the internal logic protect them when the landing was aborted?
I know, right? It's highly tempting to blame the automation, to assume the computers just glitched out. But the hard truth of the Airbus system's logic is that it didn't glitch at all.
It was doing what it was told.
Exactly. The aircraft did exactly what they commanded it to do based on the inputs it received. Because the crew did not physically click those levers into the Togier detent, the flight computers never recognized that a go-around was actually happening.
Oh, wow. So the computer thinks they're just flying around.
Right, and therefore the most critical piece of software for this maneuver, the SRS, or Speed Reference System, was never engaged.
And the SRS is essentially the electronic safety net.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. When you engage a proper go-around, the Speed Reference System takes over the pitch of the nose to guarantee you maintain a safe flying speed while climbing.
So it restricts the pitch to a maximum of about, 15 degrees?
Usually, yeah, around 15 degrees. But without that safety net engaged, the crew made their next fatal input,
Right. After leveling off, they dialed an altitude of 3,200 feet into the control panel and engaged a mode called open climb.
which is a huge issue in this specific configuration. In open climb, the autopilot's singular obsessive objective is to reach that target altitude.
But remember, the thrust levers were still sitting in the climb detent.
Exactly. So the engines weren't providing that explosive maximum go-around thrust you'd get from TOGA.
So the autopilot is looking at the target of 3,200 feet, looking at the available engine power, and basically making a mathematical decision.
Right. It trades kinetic energy for altitude. It aggressively pitches the nose up to 21 degrees, blindly following that open climb command, and rapidly bleeding off crucial airspeed.
And they're still in landing configuration, right? Gear down, flaps out.
Yeah, incredibly drag-heavy. The aircraft was bleeding speed so fast that it triggered the low-energy warning. A synthetic voice began blaring speed, speed, speed into the cockpit.
Which is terrifying to hear.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The flight crew operating manual is entirely unambiguous about this scenario. By skipping the TOGA to 10 and selecting open climb while still in that drag-heavy configuration, they inadvertently built a massive aerodynamic trap for themselves.
Okay, so the speed warning goes off. The captain is startled. He finally pushes the thrust levers all the way forward to TOGA and disconnects the autopilot to take manual control.
Right.
But here's where my understanding of the event hits a wall, like a brick wall. At this specific moment, they are at 510 meters of altitude. The engines are spooling up to maximum power.
We're getting that energy back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The aircraft is accelerating out of the low-speed condition. They are safe. Why on earth would a 5,000-hour captain abruptly push his side stick forward, forcing the aircraft into a deadly 2,000 feet per minute dive?
It seems completely irrational from the outside.
It really does. I've read theories that the red overspeed limit bars on his primary flight display just psychologically panicked him. Like he saw the speed tape rushing toward the red line and instinctively shoved the nose down to avoid ripping the flaps off.
You know, the official report definitely considers that theory. When those two powerful engines spooled up, the airspeed rapidly approached the maximum allowable limit for having the flaps fully extended.
And we are heavily conditioned in the simulator to avoid those red overspeed bars at all costs.
We absolutely are. But there is a much more insidious, overwhelming operational force at play here, which is fundamental to human biology. We have to look at the somatogravic illusion.
Oh, man. The physiology of pitch and engine power.
Exactly. The inner ear essentially lying to the brain.
So deep inside your inner ear, you have these tiny organs containing microscopic hairs suspended in fluid. When you sit in a chair and tilt your head backward to look at the ceiling, gravity pulls on that fluid, bending the hairs.
Right, and your brain reads that sensory data and correctly registers, okay, we are tilting up.
But here is the massive evolutionary flaw in the human body. If you strap a human being into a jet aircraft and accelerate them forward incredibly fast, inertia pushes that exact same fluid backward.
Bending the exact same hairs in the exact same way. Your brain literally cannot tell the difference between rapid forward acceleration and doing a violent backflip.
That is wild.
It is. Now, on a clear, sunny day, this biological flaw doesn't matter at all. Your eyes look out the window, they see the flat horizon of the Earth, and your visual cortex instantly overrides the false signals coming from your inner ear.
Because your eyes are telling you, no, we're flying straight and level.
Precisely. But consider the environment of Flight 967. They were in a pitch-black cockpit, flying over the unlit waters of the Black Sea.
Completely enveloped in thick clouds with heavy rain.
There were zero visual references outside the window.
Just a total disorienting black void.
A complete void. So, when the captain finally shoved those thrust levers to TOGA, the two CFM56 engines spooled up and delivered massive thrust.
Pushing him back in his seat.
Exactly. The sheer force of that forward acceleration pushed the captain deep into his seat. Without a visual horizon to correct his vestibular system, that acceleration created a powerful, undeniable physiological sensation that the nose of the aircraft was pitching up violently.
His inner ear was screaming at him that the plane was stalling and flipping over onto his back.
So the captain is essentially fighting a ghost. He suffers acute spatial disorientation. Even though the glowing artificial horizon on his primary flight display showed a perfectly normal, safe flight attitude, he trusted his inner ear over his instruments.
Which is the ultimate trap in aviation.
It really is. He instinctively shoved the side stick forward, to compensate for a massive climb that wasn't actually happening in reality. He drove the nose down to -11 degrees.
And simultaneously rolled the aircraft into a severe bank angle of nearly 40 degrees to the right. He pushed a perfectly flying airplane into a fatal dive.
It is a terrifying testament to how easily our senses can override thousands of hours of rigorous flight training.
Yeah. But hold on. There is a second highly trained pilot sitting right next to him watching the exact same artificial horizon. We have to ask why the pilot monitoring didn't intervene.
The CRM breakdown.
Right. If an aircraft is suddenly descending at over 2,000 feet per minute, the flaps are overspeeding, the master warning light is flashing, and the ground proximity system is screaming, "Pull UP!" The standard operating procedure mandates immediate verbal call-outs and intervention.
It's not optional.
Right. Yet the co-pilot remained practically silent. To understand why he didn't instantly grab the controls and save the plane, we have to look at what was playing in his headset at that exact second.
Yeah, this is massive crew resource management, or CRM, breakdown, driven largely by cognitive overload.
The cockpit voice recorder reveals this deadly combination of fatigue, task saturation, and just awful timing.
Awful timing. The crew had already complained on the recording about a severe lack of sleep before the flight.
Which degrades cognitive function right out of the gate.
Exactly. But more importantly, right as the captain begins pushing the nose down into this dive, the co-pilot is dealing with a long, rambling, 20-second air traffic control transmission playing over the radios.
20 seconds is an eternity in a dive.
It's a lifetime. The controller was issuing complex new approach instructions and frequencies, forcing the co-pilot to mentally process that information, write it down, and prepare to read it back.
So his attention is completely outside the control loop. He's acting as a secretary for the radio instead of monitoring the primary flight instruments.
Yes. By the time the co-pilot finished processing that radio call, looked back at his screens, and realized they were plummeting toward the ocean in a severe 40-degree right bank, the situation was already critical.
Did he react at all?
He did react. He grabbed his side stick and pulled it hard to the full left stop to try and roll the wings level.
But he critically failed to press the red priority button on his stick.
Which changes everything.
Right. And this brings us to the unique architecture of Airbus flight controls. In an older Boeing aircraft, or, a Cessna, the two control yokes are physically connected by steel cables and mechanical linkages.
Right. If the captain pushes his yoke forward, the co-pilot's yoke physically moves forward in his hands. You can feel what the other pilot is doing.
But Airbus fly-by-wire side sticks are completely independent.
Airbus designed it that way intentionally, primarily to save weight, and crucially, to prevent a scenario where a mechanical jam on one side of the cockpit dooms the aircraft.
So if one stick jams, the other pilot can still fly their independent stick.
Exactly. But the catch is that if both pilots make inputs at the exact same time, the flight control computers have to decide what to do.
Right. So think of the Airbus flight computers as a strict, emotionless accountant. When both pilots move their independent side sticks, the computer algebraically sums the inputs.
So if you pull left with 10 pounds of force, and I pull right with 10 pounds of force,
the computer calculates a sum of 0. The sticks don't physically fight each other in your hands. The computer just cancels out the math behind the scenes.
which leads directly to the dual input tragedy of this flight. The captain is disoriented, commanding nose down and right roll.
And the co-pilot realizes they are banking dangerously, so he pulls his stick hard to the left.
Right. But when you yank a side stick to the full left stop in a high-stress, high-G environment, your hand naturally introduces an unintended forward or backward pressure. We call this a parasitic force.
Because human hands aren't perfectly precise machines under panic?
Exactly. We're not robots. The co-pilot inadvertently applied a slight nose-down parasitic force while trying to roll left.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so the strict accountant computer does the math. The captain's right roll and the co-pilot's left roll largely cancel each other out, keeping the aircraft locked in the dangerous bank.
Up the pitch.
The captain's heavy nose-down input is mathematically added to the co-pilot's slight nose-down parasitic force. The dive actually compounded and steepened because of the co-pilot's input.
But wait, if two pilots are moving the sticks at the same time, shouldn't the aircraft recognize the conflict and yell, "Do you L input" at them? I mean, I've heard that warning in the simulator.
Yeah, it's a loud, unmistakable synthetic voice.
Designed to prevent exactly this scenario. If they heard that, the co-pilot would realize he needed to press his red priority button to lock out the captain's stick.
The system is designed to generate that warning, yes. But this reveals a fascinating and tragic aspect of automated warning hierarchies.
Right.
A flight computer can only yell at you about one emergency at a time. At the exact moment they were making dual inputs on the sticks, the aircraft was plummeting at a lethal descent rate toward the water.
So the Enhanced Ground Proximity Warning System, the
Remember this?
EGPWS?
Ad activated, yes.
Yeah.
And it was loudly broadcasting pull UP over the cockpit speakers.
And in the software architecture, hitting the ground is always the highest priority threat.
Always. The EGPWS warning is a higher level safety priority than the dual input warning. So the pull UP audio entirely masked and locked out the dual input voice warning. It never played.
Wow.
The co-pilot was fighting the captain was fighting the co-pilot. Neither of them physically felt the other's inputs. And the airplane was just plunging into the darkness while screaming at them to pull up.
The flight data recorder shows that in the final 2 seconds before impact, the captain actually snapped out of his spatial disorientation.
He realized the ground proximity warning was real.
Yeah, and he finally started to pull back hard on the stick to save the plane. But because the co-pilot was still applying that unprioritized parasitic nose-down force without having pressed the takeover button, the captain's pull-up command was mathematically diluted by the computer.
It just wasn't enough deflection to break the descent in time.
No, they hit the water at 285 knots.
It's just devastating. When you synthesize this entire chain of events, from the late air traffic control call, to the missed thrust attempt, to the inner ear illusion, to the uncoordinated side stick inputs, the undeniable conclusion is that the aircraft did not feel the crew.
No, the Airbus behaved exactly as it was programmed to behave based on the imperfect inputs it received.
It is a catastrophic failure of situational awareness and inability to manage the automation during a critical phase, and a total breakdown in crew communication.
When you strip away all the complex acronyms, the FMAs, the EGPWS, the TOGA detents, this entire tragedy boils down to one forgotten foundational principle.
Airbus has a set of golden rules for their pilots, and rule number 4 is remarkably simple. Take action if the flight path is not maintained.
Take action if the flight path is not maintained.
It is a philosophical mandate for aviators.
Hmm.
It means if the computers are doing something you don't understand, if the automation is confusing you, or if your inner ear is screaming at you that the aircraft is flipping over, you must immediately stop being a passive systems manager.
Right. You disconnect the autopilot. You disconnect the auto thrust. You return the side stick to absolute neutral.
Exactly. You look past all the flashing warnings, you focus entirely on the raw data on your glowing artificial horizon, and you just fly the airplane. Do not fight the automation and do not fight the pilot sitting next to you. Return to neutral, read the pitch and roll, and fly the airplane.
Return to neutral. It sounds like such a basic fundamental concept when we discuss it here in the calm, brightly lit briefing room.
It does.
But to execute that in a pitch-black cockpit, with your own vestibular system screaming that you are upside down, and the ground proximity alarms blaring in your ears, it requires an immense, almost superhuman level of discipline to trust that glowing artificial horizon over your own biological senses.
And that is precisely why knowledge alone is not enough. Knowledge is only valuable when it's deeply understood, relentlessly practiced, and successfully applied under extreme pressure.
Yeah, we don't study the somatogravic illusion just to pass a written exam.
Exactly. We study it, and we drill the physical use of the stick priority button so that when our environment and our own bodies betray us, our training takes over automatically.
Which leaves us with a chilling question to ponder as we wrap up this session. We spend our entire modern aviation careers training to manage these incredibly advanced, highly automated flight decks.
We trust the computers to calculate our speeds, protect our flight envelopes, and navigate our routes.
But when we rely so heavily on automated protections to keep us safe, what happens to fundamental raw airmanship in that split second when the automation does exactly what it was incorrectly programmed to do, and the only thing left to save the aircraft is human instinct?
Especially when, as we saw with Flight 967, that raw human instinct is the exact thing driving the aircraft into the water.
Think about that next time you're sitting on the flight deck, perfectly stabilized at 1,200 feet, and everything seems wonderfully nominal. The margin between routine and disaster is always thinner than we think. We'll see you in the jump seat next time.